What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Good morning. Firstly, I'd like to say a massive thank you for the feedback I got on my first video. I was quite blown away. A lot of you were very interested, and a lot of you wanted more information on how I do certain processes. And I do have a bunch of videos planned to make basically in that regard, where I'll be explaining certain processes when it comes to detailing, how to tackle certain obstacles, and so on and so forth. Today's video is going to be very similar to the first video I shot of the M5, except I have a very special car that I have been keeping secret from a lot of people for a very long time, because this car has actually been booked for a couple of months now, and I'm pretty damn excited to start it. So myself too. The story behind this car is quite sentimental. Basically, it was bought brand new back in 1994 by the owner's grandfather, and it's, I believe, one of the only cars of its type in Malta that were bought brand new from the dealer. Now, for any Maltese watching, that should be an attention grabber, because we all know how rare certain cars are, especially when they're bought from the local dealer back in the 90s. Now, you're gonna see this car very shortly in the next clip, so there's no hiding it really. It's a 1994, I believe, Mk4 Toyota Supra. Oh my god, I can't even begin to explain how excited I am to work on this car, for many reasons. One of the main reasons being that there is that sentimental value behind the work that I'm going to be doing. I know that the owner and his family really care for this car. It's their baby, it's their gem, and I want to make sure that this thing is the best that it can be, obviously within the limits of the budget allocated to the work. Now, there is quite a substantial amount of work that has been planned for this car. The paintwork is in dire need of attention. Now, I'll be speaking about that later on, and I'll be giving some examples, but basically, you can imagine nearly 30 years of this car being washed with just a sponge and a chamois has not fared well for the paint. I mean, it only has 21,000 miles, so it's very low mileage, but you know, the damage is still inflicted over nearly 30 years of washing the car. So to begin the process, I'm going to be doing the usual stuff. Pre-wash, decontamination, wheels cleaned obviously. I'm just going to be coming in the detailing bay, going to be inspecting it under my lights, really showing off the condition of the paintwork, and begin masking off everything like I was doing before. Cleaning the wheels of the Supra was no different to cleaning any other kind of wheels. Basically, spraying it down with wheel cleaner, letting it sit for a couple of minutes, and really agitating it to make sure you break up any contaminants that are stuck and bonded to the wheel. The wheels were never taken off and never cleaned from behind in the 27 years it's been on the road, so obviously the wheel barrels had quite a significant amount of brake dust that was stuck to them. There's not much that can be done in that case if you're not taking the wheels off, and the customer opted to not take the wheels off in this case, so I had to clean them with the wheels stuck onto the car. Now, using the appropriate tools, this was much easier to do, but it still required about 3 to 4 passes with wheel cleaner to really break down all the contamination that was stuck on. I even took off the center caps to make sure I could clean the area behind, as well as the tight ridge that was around the opening. Nearly 2 hours basically cleaning the wheels, and I mean, they're not perfect, but they're not going to become perfect with them on the car. It's not part of the package where I'm going to be removing the wheels. So now I'm gonna just go ahead and wash the car and decontaminate it and get it ready basically to be polished. So I did basically confirm it with the owner. This is a 1994 model year Supra, and in the nearly 27 years it's been on the road, it has never received any protection or anything of the sort, which is evident in the paintwork because water basically sticks to the paint. Absolutely zero beading and zero sheeting. It's very slowly dispersing. Now, surprisingly, it has very little to no contamination for never being clay-barred, apparently, as to what the owner said. Obviously, I'm still going to go ahead and clay-bar the car because it is a vital step of your paint correction process. But I'm quite positive that not much is going to come out. The process is no different to how I usually prepare cars. Basically, I snow foam the car, I let it sit for a couple of minutes, then I go around with a wash mitt and a soap bucket, washing the car from top to bottom. I then get a detailing brush, go in the tight areas such as around the mirrors, door jambs, door cracks, door sills, lights, etc., and basically strip the car from any dirt that might be sitting on it. I then rinse the car, and a little trick I like to do is basically using the soapy water as a lubricant for the clay bar. I then just go around the car, clay bar the whole thing, making sure to break out any contamination that I find, and basically make sure the paintwork is 100% contamination free before I start polishing it. So like I had originally suspected, the car barely had any contamination. There was obviously going to be something, and the car is nearly 3 decades old. So you're going to find something, especially on the lower areas of the car. They were the most heavily contaminated pieces. So that is a clean clay bar. That's a dirty clay bar. Okay, with the car done, it's now time to put it on the lift. And like that, it's on the lift. And the paintwork is in terrible condition. It's full of swirl marks, full of haze, but it's to be expected after 27 years on the road. And 27 years of washing it incorrectly. But needless to say, that means there's going to be a massive transformation, of which I'm very excited to do. Immediately after putting the car in the inspection bay, I begin working on the interior. Working on the interior is fairly simple. I just simply vacuum the seats and the carpets, and then I begin treating the leather. In this case, I was using a slightly weaker leather cleaner simply because I didn't want to put too much stress on the leather, as it was already in pretty decent shape and well taken care of. In fact, the back seats looked like they were never even sat in before. Probably because they weren't. As you can see, all I'm doing is circular motions with the leather cleaner to make sure that it foams up nicely. I let it sit for a short period of time so that the leather can absorb all the moisture that the leather cleaner is providing and give it that supple, fresh, matte look, and then I wipe off and blow out the tight creases to make sure that no cleaner sits. When it comes to treating and taking care of the dashboard and the other plastics, I simply clean them the same way. I use a dedicated plastic and upholstery cleaner, use a dedicated detailing brush, and just basically clean and remove any oils that there might remain and dust and so forth. In the case of the Supra, there was some soft touch plastic which anyone knows that 90s cars tends to basically break down and melt with the sun, so I was very careful and cautious of those, and basically just gave the whole interior a very good clean. Not that it really needed it, because again, it was basically like brand new, but generally gave it a spruce up and a nice refresh. With the interior done, I started taping the car. All the plastics have been taped on the outside, and now it's time to put some plastic on the glass and on the larger areas. Now I'm going to go ahead and start polishing the car. I'm very excited to see how this car comes out, because I've never worked on a car in this color, and I do believe it will shift a bit due to the quote-unquote damage that the clear coat has basically suffered with swirl marks and such. So yeah, let's get into it. It's so satisfying when you finally find that right combination of polish, pad, pressure, even towel to use. As I expected and as I described with the owner, typically old Japanese paint is either going to be very nice to you, where it's going to be very easy to correct, or very difficult to you, where it's going to be very hard to refine, and it is typically quite dry in nature, in the sense where your polish dries out instantly. So you start getting polishing balls, literally polish balls, flying out of your pad, the pad gunking up immediately, simply because of the amount of clear coat that's coming off. Hi, this is Gianluca from the very long future editing this video. Basically, I want to correct myself with that phrase. I don't mean with the amount of clear coat coming off. There is not a lot of clear coat coming off the car. What I meant to say is the amount of moisture that the paint is actually absorbing from the polish. Polish is essentially an abrasive suspended in a liquid, and when that liquid dries out, pretty much the abrasive just starts shooting out of the pad and sticking to the paint you're working on. Japanese paint, being so dry in nature, has a tendency to completely dry out your abrasive, your lubrication of your abrasive, so your polish, and basically causing it to stick to the surface. However, that being said, the camera is actually struggling to focus. Yep, there we go. I finally found a good combination where there is no haze left. What you're seeing is simply just a reflection of the curvature of the panel. Now I'm going to insert two photos to show you a before and after, or swirl free and swirl induced paintwork. But as you can also see, if I zoom into the panel lights, this paintwork has very little to no orange peel. So that makes it even trickier to work with, because a car with no orange peel or very little orange peel is going to show defects in it a lot more, and that haze that is seen on super flat paintwork can obviously be seen here. Now, there's a limit as to how much you're going to polish on a car like this, because you don't take away too much of the paintwork, because I mean, this is original paint. This is 27-year-old paint. So you have to be really careful in finding that right combination as soon as possible and as quick as possible. And I'm so happy to be doing it to this car, because there's so much meaning behind it, which I'll get into later on. But like, I want it to look amazing. Interior is mint. It's basically brand new, besides a tiny bit of wear on the driver's seat, but it's basically brand new. It's like a time capsule in there, and it smells like old Japanese car. And the exterior really needs that facelift and that rejuvenation, basically the pampering, to get it back to where it should be. Before progressing further into the video, I just want to show a quick example of basically the haze that's left behind when polishing this paintwork, and what was giving me the biggest challenge throughout the entire detail, because removing this haze was very difficult to begin with, and I was very limited with the amount of times I could polish the paintwork, obviously, because I didn't want to remove too much clear coat. Now, going further into detail about this haze, essentially the haze is caused when you have very dry and sticky paint, like I have mentioned throughout this video, such as this Japanese paint. The paint essentially absorbs all the lubrication that comes out of your polish or your compound, because essentially these polishes or compounds are abrasives suspended in a liquid. Now, the liquid can be oily or more oil or water based, depending on which product you use. Now, typically using something like an oilier based compound or polish is more beneficial on this drier paint, as it gives you those few extra seconds you may need to both cut and not overwork the product to make it easy to remove. Now, besides this, it was also a combination of finding the right pad, the right speed, the right pressure, in order to not overheat the panel you're working on. In the case of this car, I found that barely putting any pressure on the machine, so essentially lifting the machine ever so slightly up, helped in reducing the amount of heat that was generated. Now, yes, it did take me slightly longer to cut, but that was fine by me, because it reduced the time later on that I needed to spend refining the car. Now, how did I refine this paintwork? Well, typically I would find any other paintwork using either CarPro Reflect or Angel Wax Redemption. These two are very, very fine polishes in slightly oilier based products to help, one, with that lubrication, and two, help create that much nicer, quicker, but finer cut. The finer the cut, basically, the more reflection you're going to get. But like I said, in the case of the Supra, the polish was drying up very quick because of how dry this paintwork was. So I decided to use something different. Using CarPro Essence basically helped in giving the paintwork that foundation it needed to prevent it from being almost gelatin-like microscopically, and giving it the foundation it needed to remain hard, at least enough for me to refine the paintwork enough to get it to a level I was very happy with, as well as for future, basically the next hour or two, that I was then starting to wipe down the paintwork using CarPro Eraser, which, to be fair, is a slightly aggressive panel prep for this paintwork, but it still worked. Essentially, Essence was giving me the foundation I needed to prevent the paintwork from hazing. And at the very least, Essence with its SiO2 makeup helps when it comes to applying ceramic coatings, as basically these ceramic coatings will bond and hook with the SiO2 elements that are in the product, and now basically that kind of microscopically make up part of the paintwork. Right, so I've basically finished polishing up the car, and it was a lot more work than I anticipated in the very beginning when I took on the challenge of working on this car. I knew it would be difficult. I know Japanese paint. I know Japanese paint is extremely soft, extremely sticky. Now I finished prepping it. I wiped it down with IPA. Super, super difficult, super careful because of how sensitive the paint is. And I'm going to start coating it. It's going to get 2 layers of CarPro Finest Reserve, as well as a complementary coat of CarPro Gliss on top of that. Paintwork on this car is so sensitive that even the movement of the applicator on top of the paintwork when applying the ceramic coating can generate enough heat to cause it to haze just a bit. Now, if that can't give you an image of how difficult this car has been to work with, I don't know what else can. But as you can see from behind me, the car is looking pretty spectacular, and it still needs at least 24 hours to cure to essentially what would be the final result. I'm very excited to see not only the owner's reaction when it's done, but even the finished result itself, because a car never truly looks done till it's actually done, and sometimes even I'm blown away by the level of work that I managed to achieve. Right, first coat was applied. Now I have to give it some time to set. Usually you have to wait about 2 hours from when you applied the first coat to then start applying the secondary coat. It's been about 2 hours since I started. So I started from the bonnet, so I can technically go ahead and start reapplying on the bonnet again, but I'm gonna sit down, take a short break, have a cup of coffee, and then get to applying the second coat. Alrighty, so with the car completely ceramic coated, it's time to take care of the odd bits here and there in preparation of completing the car. So, what's left? You need to take care of the plastics, take care of the wheels, take care of the glass, and so on and so forth. I'm going to be taking care of the glass now. You can click up here to have a look at my glass cleaning tutorial, which is basically going to explain how to get perfectly clean glass every time, no issues. Like so. Flip over to the dry side and go over it one more time to make sure that there's no residue left. go over the glass with absolutely zero product. And you make sure that you go over everywhere you did. You can close the glass and give it another buff from the outside. So as you can see in the reflection, I have no polarizer, so I'm not hiding anything that might be on the glass, and it's basically see-through. So much so that the camera is actually struggling to focus. This is the passenger, the rear window for comparison. So we're going from this to this. Now if I open it, you can see that it's nearly basically invisible. I'm going to basically be going through the whole car, doing exactly that across every single piece of glass to make sure that it's completely streak-free, 100% clear and clean. I'm currently using my phone to record my voice. I'm too far away from the mic, so there'll be an echo. What can I say? I mean, I typically make these last clips at the end of details, just to say like my thoughts on it. Now, the paintwork on this car was something else for sure. It was old Japanese paint, which has a tendency to be very sticky because of how dry it is. It was a challenge, not gonna lie, especially considering the car is all original paint. You have to keep in mind as a detailer, like I've said before, that preservation over perfection on cars like these. I treated the car as if it was my own, was being super careful. Some places I couldn't even polish too much because the paintwork was a bit too thin for my liking. But ultimately, like what can I say? I'm blown away. The car is incredible. It's honestly incredible. It looks like it just rolled off the showroom floor in a Toyota dealership 27 years ago, and I'm blown away. Sometimes, I mean, I've done a lot of supercars and I've done a lot of sports cars and unique cars, but working on this was something else because it not only has a lot of value in itself, but it also has a lot of sentimental value to the family, and I wanted to make sure that basically I posted that and showed off exactly what the car looked like back in the day when it was purchased new. So anyway, I want to thank you for watching this video. Hopefully you found it informative, and see you in the next one.
Right now I'm standing in a corner. I see you from across the room. It's kinda crowded here, but I know you see me too. Everybody's singing oh, everybody's singing oh. I don't know what it is about you. It must be in the way you move. Just say you want me to. We got nothing to lose. You're looking so you're looking so now I'm moving closer to you, and it's getting dark in this room. Tell me what you wanna do.
Illustia. Wow, man. Ah, bitch. Acertei, pessoal.